church to come and train for ordained ministry or ministry in the church, serving God and humanity. When you are a postulant, one of the units that you need to study is a unit that I'm going to lead you through. It's a unit by the name of Old Testament survey. By the way, before I proceed, allow me to say some things that are very critical about the Old Testament. Why is it important that we study the Old Testament? By the way, statistically, the Old Testament is 75.55% of the entire Bible. Therefore, you can never ignore the Old Testament. It is very critical. And I want to say, in the Old Testament, there is the basis, the gem of all great Christian doctrines that are biblical. In the Old Testament, as we study this, we look at the doctrine of sin, the doctrine of God, the doctrine of deliverance, the topic of rebellion and inborn sin. All the major biblical doctrines are found in the Old Testament. Therefore, you can never, and I repeat, you can never ignore the Old Testament. Why? The Old Testament is the New Testament enfolded. You cannot understand the New Testament without reading the concepts and the message that is in the Old Testament. The entire salvation history of the Bible that commences with Adam and completes this narration in Revelation finds its flow in the Old Testament. You cannot understand the salvation history without understanding the Old Testament. Major events, major figures of the Bible are traced in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there is the shadow of Christ. There is what we call the progressive revelation. Christ is revealed in the Old Testament. And as we look at each book of the Old Testament, we are going to look at shadows and types of Christ in the Old Testament. So the basis of Christ and his personality and work is foreshadowed in the Old Testament. Therefore, for you to understand the message of the entire Bible, you need to get to understand the Old Testament. As a good Anglican, how many books do we carry as we go to church? Number one, we carry the Bible. Number two, we carry the other book that is called the lectionary. You know the lectionary that contains readings that are supposed to be read for every Sunday. That are supposed to be read during each and every Sunday. By the way, yesterday, the psalm appointed for yesterday, 13th Sunday after Trinity, was Psalm 124. I preached in an ordinary service, Psalm 124. In the Holy Communion service yesterday, the Gospel portion of the Bible do you read more? Is it the Old Testament or the New Testament? The Old Testament. That's why this unit is very, very critical. Because as an Anglican, all your preachings should be from And let me find you to have preached outside the lecture. Please do not concoct your own sermons from whatever book on a Sunday service. You're supposed to preach from the lectionary. That is the systematic, recommended sermon that is supposed to be preached by Anglican church ministers. Are we together? Yes. If you did not know, at least now you know. Now, as we look at Old Testament survey, we look at the history behind the text of the Bible. We look at the periods that marked the Old Testament. We look at the patriarchal periods. We will look at the Exodus periods. We will look at the theocratic periods, the period of the reign of judges. But before we go to judges, we look at the conquest of the land. How the children of Israel conquered the promised land. And later, we are not only going to look at the conquest and the time of the judges and the Amphictyony, or that leadership that was there, the leadership during the time of judges. We are going to look at the monarchy, the time of the kings, and we are going to look at the united monarchy under King David, under King Saul, David, and Solomon. And we are going to look at the divided monarchy. The divided monarchy was after the death of Solomon. There was somebody by the name of Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And we will look at the factors that led to the division of the monarchy. Later, we are going to look at the period of the divided monarchy. We are going to look at the northern kingdom and look at some of the prophets that ministered in this northern kingdom, including Hosea. Hosea is a prophet who was called by God. Hosea was a prophet who was called by God to marry a prostitute by the name of Gomer, to depict the faithfulness of God and the harlotry of the nation of Israel. For none of the northern kings were good. Amos is another prophet that we look at very critically, as he is a prophet from the south, but he is called to preach to the north. Rehoboam went to the south. Two tribes, Benjamin and Judah. The headquarters of the southern kingdom was what? Where? Jerusalem. The headquarters of the northern kingdom was Samaria. Later, we are going to look at 722 BC. 722 BC, this is the time that the northern kingdom, because of their wicked leadership, the 10 tribes succumbed and they were taken to the Assyrian captivity. The Assyrian exile. And you know, by the way, the northern kingdom ceased to exist completely. But because of God's promise that Davidic lineage will last forever, the southern kingdom continued. They were good kings. Around 5 were good kings, including Hezekiah. Josiah is a king of reform, that the Pentateuch was discovered, the book of the laws were discovered. Passover feast was restored during the kingship of Josiah in the southern kingdoms. Later, idols were removed from the temple and high places. He tried to reform. That's why they stayed for more years. But in 586 BC, they succumbed to Babylonian captivity. Later, as we look at Old Testament, we are going to look at the exilic period when they went to exile. You remember, there are three prophets during the time of exile. 1, 5, 6, or 5 BC. The Babylonian came in 3 phases. 6 or 5, 597, and 586. Here, they took Daniel to Babylon. Here, they took Ezekiel. Prophet Ezekiel was taken to Babylon. 586, Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, was left in the land. During the time of Babylonian captivity, they lost their identity, they suffered. You remember Psalm 137, by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat and remembered Zion. And the people were counting them. They say, sing for us songs of Zion. But they say, how can we sing songs of Zion in a strange land? There is one clip in one of my videos I share by the rivers of Babylon. Psalm 137. That is the exilic period. We're going to look at the exilic period. Later, we are going to look at post-exilic period. There are also 3 groups that came back to the land. And it is only Judah that they came back to. First group was led by a man by the name of Zerubbabel. He was from the Davidic line. The second group was led by Ezra. And the third group was led by Nehemiah. Zerubbabel came to rebuild the temple. Ezra was very instrumental in restoring the priestly worship, the priestly system of service, and even restoring Passover, that it was remembered. And later, there is this man by the name of Nehemiah who came and rebuilt the walls. But there were also Jews who did not. In the Old Testament, we look at the Patriarchal Periods. The Patriarchal period is between 2000 BC to around 1800 BC. This is the time that is known as the Patriarchy. Patriarchy is leadership. Patriarchy is leadership where men take the lead. And inheritance is passed through the male lineage. It is a social system of community or government where leadership is taken by men. It is men who lead. This is in juxtaposition, this is in contrast with matriarchy. Matriarchy is where women reign and men melt. But in patriarchy, when men say, women shrink. And inheritance is passed through the male line. Most of the Africans are a patriarchal society. Yes or no? Yes. Most of them are patriarchal. But we thank God things are changing. There are places in Kenya where a woman has not been elected as a member of parliament. Unless this time it has changed. Among such counties is a county by the name of Bungoma County. The first time a woman was elected as an MP is the time when they introduced women representative. And Honorable Reginalda was the first MP because of patriarchy. Some people say, oh, Hasita. A lady? No. Because they are patriarchal. In patriarchal society, men eat kidneys, lungs, soft things. He can tell you, women are left with hooves and matumbo and things that have no nutritional value. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the three patriarchs that we look at them in the Old Testament. During patriarchy, we look at their food. They could make bread after grinding using stone. They used to grind millet and mix it with water, place it in a stone so that it could get hot. They made bread. Some of the things like olive oil was of medicinal value. Their soap, they used soap made out of animal fats. In a patriarchal society, a family, because these patriarchs were nomads. You know nomads? Nomads are people who move from one place to another. And you know that nomads are very keen about rainfall. By the way, do you know Alaga in Turkana? Have you ever been to Alaga? What's Alaga for those people who do not understand Greek here?
Alaga is made by during the rain season. There's no water.
Passes there. Can that water carry a human being? Many, even cows and camels are carried. So a patriarch is someone who was a nomad. He lived in the desert. And when you live in the desert, water is very critical. You must know at which particular time water and pasture is found at which particular time. And you must know the pattern of rains. Because without that rain, your animals will die, like right now. And also, if you don't know floods, they can sweep you. There are vehicles that have been swept because they thought that the flash floods are something to joke with. So the patriarchs were nomads. And so when they were nomads, they checked the weather pattern and they moved with the rain pattern. I've talked to you about their food. They used to make bread, told you. Their medicine, even their soap. And the patriarchs, I want to tell you the patriarchs, since they depended on everything on God and the rain, religion was their way of life. And their life was one big prayer. Everything was worship to God. And no man depended on God 100%. Their family was comprised of 25 to 50 members. Do you know why? If they were less than 25 members, they were vulnerable to attack. They could be attacked by other marauding tribes. But if they were more than 50, it was difficult to feed them. So when they exceeded 50, they split into families. What was their leisure? Men could sit and chat and pass time. As old men told young men about history, values, ethics, and the history of their community. The women in the tent, there was a part for women and a part for men. But anyway, did they have children? Yes. Sometimes, even in patriarchal societies, people pretend they don't need each other, but of course they do. Children were found. So, patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Allow me, as I look at patriarchy, later I'm going to give you the handouts and the notes. But as we look at the patriarchs, let's look at the 5 books of the Bible. They are parts of the Old Testament. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are known as the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch, from the word Penta, which means 5. They are also called the Torah, the Decalogue, or the Law books. These books are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, there are 2 major positions on who wrote the first 5 books. There are 2 theories on the authorship of the 5 books. The first theory is called the traditional Mosaic authorship. The traditional Mosaic authorship is a theory that postulates that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. This view is supported by Jews of all nations, Jews of all times, in all places, with few exceptions like Spinoza. They ascribe to Mosaic. The Talmudic tradition. The other thing is the internal evidence from the book. Parts of the book subscribe to Mosaic authorship. The other thing, that Moses was a learned son of a king. He was literate and he was able to write. That is a view that supports the traditional Mosaic authorship. And I want to say, when you look at these books, the stories are flowing. And you can easily deduce that Moses wrote the first 5 books. But there is a second view that is called documentary hypothesis. Documentary hypothesis. Documentary hypothesis was propagated by people like Spinoza. Then there is a man called Strauss. But it brings its fuller exposition by a man by the name of Julius Wellhausen. Julius Wellhausen said that Pentateuch, the first 5 books, were not written by Moses. They were compiled by an editor, preferably somebody by the name of Ezra. Ezra lived around 444 BC. Moses lived in 1527, he was born. By the way, allow me to say that Moses' life is divided into 3. From 1527 to 1487, Moses was in the palace. You remember, he was found by the king's daughters. He was in the palace, Anikula Mayai. I told you one time I was in the palace, eating the good things. By the way, when you visit my friend Mulundu Toko Omara, when you go to such parishes, Padri analeteo kukumzi, not the whole of it. Thank God I don't eat chicken. So Padri mwenyewe ndio anagawa. So when you're in the palace, you are the one anagawa. So mwele ile ulinisumbua mbavu. Mabawa shika hizo. Wewe mwenyewe unakula kifua. But I don't see any meat there. But anyway. Moses was in the palace. And Moses was able to access the records, family records. Therefore, at this time, Moses wrote the book of Genesis. 1487 to 1447. Moses was in the Midian desert. He was in the in-laws. When you are in the in-laws, you don't say anything. You just go. You cannot speak harshly. You talk politely. When he was in the Midian desert, that is when scholars say he wrote the book of Job. And from 1447 to when he died, 1407, Moses was in the wilderness, leading the children of Israel from Egypt to Mount Nebo. This is where when he wrote Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and
Deuteronomy.
are we together? So, but Spinoza is telling, well, I actually say, no, this is not true. The first 5 books were combined from 4 different sources. Source document J, that is called the Jehovists. Source document E, that is called the Elohists. Source document B, that is called the Deuteronomists. And source document B, that is called the Priestly. So you find that in source document J, God is known as Jehovah. In source document E, it's called Elohim. Source document B, which is the Deuteronomist, we find stories that support the southern kingdom in contrast to the northern kingdom, and things to do with sacrifice were found in a priestly document. So there were 5 different sources. Like tomorrow I'm going to teach you research. So Ezra used different sources to write, to compile and edit. What are some of the proofs, the evidence that they give? It's called an hypothesis, documentary hypothesis. Hypothesis is something that has been stated but has never been substantiated. Why is it? Why some of the proof? One, the different names of God. The different names of God is one of the reasons that supports documentary hypothesis. Number 2, the doublets. They are stories that refer to the same thing, but they are different stories. A perfect example is Genesis chapter 1. Is what we call the first creation story. Genesis chapter 2 is called the second creation story. There are some similarities, but there are also some differences. So they say, no, why are these 2 different stories? There must be 2 different sources. So there are these 2 views you must understand. Documentary hypothesis and traditional mosaic. Are we together?
Yes.
Now, let's look at Genesis. Genesis is the book of beginnings. Just as I've underscored, I subscribe to the traditional mosaic profession. But you are free to interrogate these and come up with your own preferred position. But the traditional position is more credible. I see the flow of the story. I see Moses as an authentic person who could have written this particular book. Genesis. Let's talk about Genesis. Genesis is a book of beginnings. First verse is Bereshit Bara Elohim Adonai. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. It's the book of beginnings. As we look at this book, the authorship, the dates I've already told you, between 1527 to 1487 BC. You must know that in BC we count going down before Christ. Now, why was Genesis written? It's very critical that for any book, as you preach, you must understand why a book is written. Why was Genesis written? It was written by Moses to encourage the children of Israel who are in bondage and suffering. But God is faithful to his promises that he promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But they are going to be in bondage for 400 years, but he's going to deliver them. It was written to encourage his people. The doctrinal purpose is to show that God is faithful to his promises. Is Christ seen in Genesis? That's a very critical question. Is Christ seen? Yes, Christ is there. You remember when Adam and Eve ate matunda ya katikati. You know that story? There are people who interpret it as sex. But I want to tell you it's a very wrong interpretation. Why? The Bible is very clear. There are two ways of interpreting the Bible. You interpret it literally or figuratively. The Bible is very clear. When it says sex, it says Adam knew the wife. It did not hide. And to assert that the children of the serpent and Eve had a child called Cain is a product of fertile imagination and wrong exegesis and hermeneutics. Later, you'll understand exegesis is when you try to find the original meaning of the text. The original meaning of the text. Hermeneutics, you're going to learn. It's not a very big term. Hermeneutics is the science and art of interpreting the scripture. Hermeneutics. The other one you're going to learn is something by the name homiletics. That's why I'm teaching you when you go back home, you tell people exegesis, hermeneutics, homiletics, they'll say you have gone to Capsule. Homiletics is the art and the science of preaching. It's called homiletics. Are we together? So you must understand these things. Talk like a postulant. Talk like someone who has entered a theological class. And I think useme tu I'll remain as I was. Mimi sitabadilika huko. There is no need why you came here. You could have been ordained at home and continue preaching as it was in the beginning. So it is now. And forever shall be, world without end. It's good that you learn and change. And I want to tell you, change is good. Now you have understood why Genesis was written. How is Christ seen? Remember wakati walikuwa uchi na wakatoroka. God prepared a sacrifice, an animal,